So I think Chris made some good points of not using games just to game, not just using them because they are games, right? But he used them to motivate his students and engage them in his class. And so, but I want you to think about that when you think of different topics that you learn, because we often use games to help us learn topics. So what was the hardest topic you ever studied in school?
Astronomy.
What made astronomy hard?
I have no idea.
It was so hard she didn't learn any of it.
It's true.
Any other tough topics? It doesn't have to be a whole class. Maybe it can just be a section of a class.
I mean, I think like calculus for me was pretty hard when I took that in high school, and I remember struggling and being pretty solid at all math forms up until then, and then it was like, what? And so I know that struggle, and there was never, I think, in this case, having something that would be a relatable function would have definitely helped and probably stuck today, because could have been a science professor, professor. I don't know what those are called. See? Can't even be one if I don't know what they're called.
Sure.
I could have been a teacher.
Right.
You know what? I took a coding class, and it was an online course, and the instructor actually had us go to a badging gamification website in order to learn. Mm-hmm. And the website, to me, was so terrible because it didn't actually explain anything. So I didn't get any of the badges. So I was just like, forget this. Like, can you help me with this? Like, I called up some of my friends, and then we worked on it together because, like, they knew what they were doing.
So obviously they were trying to gamify it?
It was trying. It was, yeah.
So our next guest, actually, Adam Gordon, works for Andamio Games. And they are working really hard to take challenging topics such as calculus or neuroscience and create games and engaging games around those. So he was able to kind of pull the curtain back for us and tell us their kind of structure on what they think about and what goes into the development of those games to make them both engaging but ultimately effective.
My name's Adam Gordon. I am the Director of Educational Outreach at a startup in Minneapolis called Andamio Games. Andamio is Spanish for scaffold, and we kind of hang our hat on scaffolded games to engage kids in STEM subjects.
And so why games?
Well, for us, we are, there's a couple of reasons. One, it's what students are more and more used to now, this way of interacting in the world through games. And we like, in particular about games, taking it out of the pass-fail mode and moving into a world where repeated attempts and failures are actually part of the deal. That working until you win or get the answer or solve the problem is the mode of learning, rather than if I try this, I'm going to fail, and so I'm going to give up. So it's really trying to change that paradigm. And I guess the other piece of it for us is we've got a very strong collaborative piece. And we feel like putting students in a collaborative mode makes that peer learning possible. And when they are in a collaborative mode in a game, it takes away some of the unnecessary competition that can kind of squelch certain students. And what we found is students who are kind of reticent or quiet actually come to life when they're put in this new kind of problem-solving mode, as opposed to achieve and score mode. Achieve and pass or fail mode. So, so that's why games for us.
Great. So I saw iNeuron. Do you have more games than that, or just more that are coming?
Yep. So in addition to iNeuron, and we're actually right now we're doing classroom testing on iNeuron version 2, which is about 5 times the content as what's on the App Store right now, and kind of completely redesigned. just won an NSF grant in November and just started it to build a game to teach cell respiration. And so we're going at it from the perspective of photosynthesis, both at the cell level, but also then bringing that over to global systems, connecting to that, what's going on in the world. And we also will be releasing probably this quarter a game to teach the basics of electrical engineering. And we partnered with a local museum called the Bakken Museum to create a curriculum that will scaffold students up on the basics of electrical engineering. So.
Wow. Well, if you need any beta testers, let us know. I'm sure we have some teachers that would love to help you guys out and get your stuff in the classroom.
Well, we do need beta testers, and we think we've figured out an interesting way to get it in the hands of teachers outside of classrooms, but that's the first step. You know, we just find that that's an easier first step to just, because they're going to be maybe not the end user, but they have to implement it. And so we try to include teachers very early on in the process before we actually say, hey, let's put this in a classroom. We try to get feedback and development help and ideas from them early. And then we say, all right, now will you try this with your kids? Because we know how precious that time is, and it's just hard to. So, but I'm going to take you up on that. Scott, I really am.
You've kind of skimmed on this a little bit, but what does that kind of process for you guys look like as far as kind of gamifying a subject area or a topic or a classroom? And I know that's probably a pretty broad question, but maybe give us some background on that.
So what the process looks like for us is, first, we look at the difficult problem, and we actually go at it from what are the typical misconceptions that get perpetrated around an idea. And we look at, well, what is the moment that creates that misconception, and can we get in there and address that through scaffolding in a game? So we start to build a big outline, a big framework for lesson planning. Okay, what do we want to teach generally? And then within that, what are the key points? So once we have kind of an outline, then we look at that lesson plan and we say, what parts of this lesson lend themselves to the kind of interactions that can happen in a collaborative game using mobile devices? So it's not everything. So part of our game is just scaffolding that's in a tablet form. It's, we're not trying to replicate a textbook per se, but there is some information that just has to get in. So if I'm going to play the neuroscience game, I have to understand how electricity passes through a neuron, and that it turns into a chemical at the synapse, and those kind of things. So some of that has to be just disseminated, through good scaffolding. But then there are parts that actually can yield to a game approach, and that's what we're looking for. We're looking for those moments. When can we, having scaffolded and provided enough information, when can we now create a game that, especially one that's collaborative and constructivist, which is to say, put kids in a position to create and build what they're doing, and they'll remember that much better than if they're just reading in a book or taking notes or seeing it in a movie.
Great.
Yeah, so one thing I was thinking of, I like what you said earlier about how you like to have the game be kind of collaborative and how there's like teams, so it's just not as super competitive, right, as that some kids thrive on. Like actually both Scott and I would thrive on the super competitiveness, whereas some people would kind of just shrink and not want to do anything because they don't want to make a mistake or they don't want to do that. So it sounds like you guys have considered the challenges of gaming a topic or a classroom. Are there any others that you would definitely watch out for?
Competition is going to occur whether or not we explicitly lay it into the game. So what happens is with ours, you have pairs or threesomes of kids working on a challenge, and then there's another pair over here and another group over here, and they know that they're all working on this challenge. And so there's this little buzz in the classroom, and when someone gets it, the other teams kind of know, you know what I mean? So there's this competition that arises, but it's not built into the game. It's not like, oh, your team won because you came first. It arises naturally. What motivates someone to keep moving through information when it's not World of Warcraft or when it's not Candy Crush, or you know what I mean? So we're actually trying to get kids to move through material that is complicated. They might say dry. They might, how do we motivate them through? So there's that individual piece, and part of that is just points. And I'll pull the curtain back on our point system later on. But part of it is points, but part of it is also they get immersed in the game because of the collaboration, not because of these wicked music and 3D graphics and all this, but because they are put into collaboration with someone. That's what gets them immersed, and they forget for a second that they're learning a difficult science, a difficult science thing. So we're trying to get at that game state in a different way that has this other impact, as opposed to the game state that we would have in a shooter game or something else where everything goes away. So we actually want a different kind of game state, and that's what we're going for. So.
What are maybe some resources you might be able to share for our teachers that we're working with, that if they want to gamify their classroom or maybe start gamifying lessons, what are maybe some resources out there? What are first steps that you could give them to maybe start that process?
There are people very passionate about this, and I went for my first time this last summer to a conference called GLS. So it's Games and Learning and Society. And it takes place in Madison in the summer. Last year it was July, this year it's August. It's largely academic, and it looks precisely at this. How did people bring games to the classroom? One guy was there saying, here's how I gamified an entire school, how we gamified interacting with kids, we put them all on this achievement level, and if they're on the first part of this level, then we treat them a certain way, and every teacher knew where every kid was. And so now it's this hyper personalized learning experience where every teacher, the gym teacher and the math teacher and the English teacher, they all know where every kid is. So the example is a kid comes to school who has been missing from school. Instead of shaming that kid and saying, here's all the work you're missing, every teacher knows. They go to that kid and they say, we're so glad you're here today. What do you need? Can I get you a piece of paper? Can I get, until that kid has been coming to school for a while, and then they put him on a different scale. It was like, all right, now you got to step up. But they don't just hit that kid who's just having trouble getting to school. So he gamified that whole relationship. And so this conference is amazing. And I know there are other games and learning conferences. That's the one I have personal experience with. A lot of academics, a lot of ed tech companies trying to figure it out. And I would say anything like that would be a great place, because you need to be with your peers who've tried it and failed, yay, or who have tried it and succeeded.
Great.
Anything else you can think of?
No, Adam, you've been great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, much appreciated.
Cool.
All right. Thanks, Adam. Have a good afternoon.
Yeah, good luck with it.